Money, violent riots, possible end of 2017, next economic crash 2018. James RICKADS. James RICKADS says the next economic crash will lock you out of your money. RICKADS has a new book titled The Road to Ruin. RICKADS paints a scary possible scenario for what is coming, and contends the global elites have a secret plan for the next financial crisis. RICKADS goes on to explain they are going to lock down the system when the crisis hits. In 1998, everybody wanted their money back, and they printed the money. In 2008, everybody wanted their money back, and they printed the money. In 2018, or sooner, everyone is going to want their money back, but they are not going to print the money. They are going to tell you that can't have it. They are going to lock down the system, and close the banks. Money market funds are going to suspend redemptions. Stock exchanges are going to be closed, and they'll say that's temporary. That's what Nixon said when he closed the gold window in 1971. They will do it to buy time, until they can't flood the market with SDRs, special drawing rights, IMF currency. So, do we get inflation or deflation in the upcoming economic crash? RICKADS says you might get some deflation first, but I don't expect that, because central banks are trying so hard to cause inflation. The natural state of the world is deflation right now. But governments can't have deflation, it destroys the tax base. So, you have natural deflation and policy inflation, and they are pushing together. It's an unstable equilibrium, and at some point, it is going to snap one way or another. If it is deflationary, and I don't expect this, the policy will be even more money printing. As far as the SDRs are concerned, it will certainly be inflationary. You may not be able to save the world, but you can save yourself and family by getting into some assets that will stand this inflation and be non-digital. Any digital money can be locked down with a few keystrokes. Non-digital money such as gold, silver, fine art, land, natural resources, water, and there is a long list of things. Those are the things that are going to last. The other point I make is that when this happens, it will happen very quickly. You want to know it in advance, and the stock market will be closed when you decide to get out of the stock market. You may not be able to get gold. Right now, you can get it. But in a panic when it's going up $100 per ounce per day, you'll be watching the price go up, but you won't be able to get it. RICKADS predicts a complete lockdown of the global financial system for at least weeks, and possibly months. RICKADS contends, definitely weeks, and perhaps months, and it could turn into Mad Max. It could turn into what I call money riots with people burning down banks, but the elites are ready for that also. What they have done, because you can't turn the military into police, they turned the police into military. As the money situation gets worse, states and elites will not go down without a fight. Jim RICKADS says in yesterday's analysis, I compared Janet Yellen to an athlete running the high hurdles at a track meet. Her finish line is a rate hike on December 13th. The hurdles are inflation data, the Trump tax cut, and a government shutdown on December 8th. She has to clear all three hurdles to make it to the finish line. These hurdles are all conveniently time-stamped. The inflation data came out this morning, the tax bill vote is scheduled for Friday, and the government shutdown is scheduled for next Friday, December 8th. As New York Mayor Ed Koch used to ask, how am I doing? Well, the inflation data this morning was decisively indecisive. The particular metric in focus was the personal consumption expenditure core deflator on a year-over-year basis released monthly by the Commerce Department, with a one-month lag. Call it PCE core year-over-year for short. Sounds technical, but it's important, because that's the number the Fed watches. There are plenty of other inflation readings out there, CPI, PPI, core, non-core, trimmed mean, etc. But PCE core year-over-year is the one the Fed uses to benchmark their performance in terms of their inflation goal. The Fed's target for PCE core is 2%. The October reading released this morning was 1.4%. For weeks I've been saying that a 1.3% reading would put the rate hike on hold, and a 1.6% reading would make the rate hike a done deal. So, the actual reading of 1.4% was in the mushy middle of that easy-to-forecast range. What's interesting is that the prior month was also 1.4%, so the new number is unchanged from September. That's not what the Fed wants to see. They want to see progress toward their 2% goal. On the other hand, the 1.4% from September was a revised number. It was earlier reported at 1.3%, the same number as August. You can read this two ways. If you see the August 1.3% as a low, then you can say the 1.4% readings for September and October were progress toward the Fed's 2% target. It doesn't read, but Yellen could use this to justify her view that the year-long weakness in PCE core is transitory. On the other hand, these 0.1% moves month to month are really statistical noise and may even be due to rounding. The bigger picture is that PCE core is weak and nowhere near the Fed's target. Another rate hike in December could be a huge blunder if it slows the economy further and leads to more weakness in PCE core. On balance, the PCE core number is probably just enough, barely, to justify a rate hike. I've raised my probability of a December rate hike from 30% to 55%. That's what good Bayesians do. They update forecasts continually based on new data. Of course, the market has been pricing in at a 100% probability for a few weeks. That's fine. Markets have been wildly wrong in the past. I'd rather stick with a good model and update continually and swing from one extreme to the other based on crowd behavior. My Bayesian statistical models, along with other scientific tools, have served me well for a long time, and I am sticking with them. As John Maynard Keynes said, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? Actually, Keynes never said that, but it's a wonderful quote attributed to him. Keynes would certainly agree. What about the remaining two hurdles for our track star Janet Yellen? The tax bill vote is scheduled for Friday. If it passes the Senate, it will almost certainly become law in the next few weeks, after the House and Senate versions are reconciled. The stock market has already priced in a tax cut. Markets want to go up much more if the bill passes, because they already expect it to pass. But if the bill fails, markets could plunge on the bad news. That's important. If it does not pass, the disappointment factor will be huge and could send the stock market tumbling. Something like that happened in 2008 when the TARP legislation failed. The Dow fell over 700 points in one day. Congress got the message and passed TARP a few days later. The response would be much larger today, perhaps 1,000 Dow points or more, because the market is starting from a much higher level. The fact is, no one knows what will happen in the Senate. At least state senators are waiting for a manager's amendment, basically a rewrite of the entire bill, to make up their minds. Call it 50/50, a coin toss. Heads, the Senate passes the tax bill, tails they don't. But if the tax cut fails, and the market tumbles, the Fed will not raise rates. Finally, there's the government shutdown, if Republicans and Democrats cannot agree on spending. These are mostly for show. Most of the government remains open, and the shutdowns are usually resolved within a week or so. That means finding some compromise on a long list of hot-button issues, including funding for Trump's wall with Mexico, deportation of illegal immigrants brought to the U.S. as children, the DREAMER Act, also referred to as DACA, funding for Planned Parenthood, funding for Obamacare, called the CHIP, and more. Still, it's difficult to imagine the Fed hiking rates on December 13th if the government shuts down on December 8th and remains shut on the date of the FOMC meeting. There is not much middle ground between Democrats and Republicans on spending policy issues like immigration, Trump's wall, Obamacare bailouts, and a host of other hot-button issues. This looks like another 50/50 call. Heads, the government stays open, tails, the government shuts down. The problem with two coin tosses is that the odds of getting tails at least once are 75%. So, Yellen still has a long way to go before she crosses the finish line. My trading recommendation is unchanged. The euro, yen, gold, and treasury notes are all fully priced for rate hike. If it happens, those instruments won't change much, because the event is priced. If there is no rate hike, euros, gold, yen, and treasury notes will all soar. So, there is an asymmetry in the probable outcomes. If you go long euros, gold, yen, and treasury notes, you won't lose much if the Fed hikes, assuming no geopolitical shocks, but you could win big if they don't. James Rickards says don't get too comfortable with the record high stock prices. Rickards explains, I think the markets will have a very violent reversal in late November, or early December. Let me be specific about why, because I never make claims like this without backing it up. Here's what's going on. Right now, markets are priced for a Fed rate hike in December. The stock market is interpreting this rate hike as economic strength. Everything is set for a violent reversal, because the Fed is not going to hike interest rates in December. So, why is the Fed not going to raise rates? Rickards says it is because of not enough inflation and way too much deflation. This has the Fed scared to move. Rickards contends, why is deflation a central bank's worst nightmare? The answer is deflation increases the real value of debt. In other words, the dollar actually gets stronger in a deflationary environment. If I owe you dollars, and the dollar just got stronger, I owe you more money in real terms. It becomes more difficult to pay off debt in a deflationary environment, because my income is drying up. The real burden of debt is going up, and if I couldn't pay you to begin with, deflation is going to make it more difficult to repay you. Imagine if we had 1 or 2% deflation, and the value of the debt was going up. The defaults would be even worse. Bad debts would pile up. The banking system would be under threat. Tax collections would go down in nominal terms. The credit of the U.S. government would be called into question. The U.S. government might default. These are all the horrendous consequences of deflation, and it is why central banks cannot have deflation. So, what happens if Rickards is correct, and the Fed does not raise rates? Rickards says, when that happens, and I think it will happen, all of a sudden, the dollar is going to get weaker, the euro is going to get stronger, gold is going to go up, and bonds are going to rally. So, there will be a lot of big market effects. I am not talking the end of the world. I am not talking about a total meltdown. I am talking about a violent repricing of some major commodities and bonds. Because the market thinks the Fed is going to raise, and they not. Is there a danger in October, as many believe there could be? Rickards says yes, and it comes from increased tensions with North Korea. Rickards says, we have a window from October 10th to October 21st. What is the significance of that window? October 10th is the anniversary of the Communist Party of North Korea. Kim Jong-un is getting ready to test more missiles. We have two catalysts. The anniversary on October 10th and war games with South Korea on October 21st. In that window is when I expect one or more missile tests. That's going to be another wake-up call to the markets. The markets are sleepwalking. They don't understand this war is coming, and it is coming. A shooting war, a preemptive war, a kinetic war with the United States against North Korea, I do expect by mid-2018. Kim Jong-un thinks we are bluffing. We are not. Rickards also restates his case for $10,000 gold, and contends it is at a relatively low price, and people should buy it now, and simply hold it. Digital money such as gold, silver, fine art, land, natural resources, water, and there is a long list of things. Those are the things that are going to last. The other point I make is that when this happens, it will happen very quickly. You want to know it in advance, and the stock market will be closed when you decide to get out of the stock market. You may not be able to get gold. Right now, you can get it. But in a panic when it is going up $100 per ounce per day, you'll be watching the price go up, but you won't be able to get it. Rickards predicts a complete lockdown of the global financial system for at least weeks, and possibly months. Rickards contends, definitely weeks, and perhaps months, and it could turn into Mad Max. It could turn into what I call money riots with people burning down money, violent riots possible end of 2017 next economic crash 2018. James Rickards. James Rickards says the next economic crash will lock you out of your money. Rickards has a new book titled The Road to Ruin. Rickards paints a scary possible scenario for what is coming, and contends the global elites have a secret plan for the next financial crisis. Rickards goes on to explain, they are going to lock down the system when the crisis hits. In 1998, everybody wanted their money back, and they proved that because central banks are trying so hard to cause inflation. The natural state of the world is deflation right now. But governments can't have deflation, it destroys the tax base. So, you have natural deflation and policy inflation, and they are pushing together. It's an unstable equilibrium, and at some point, it is going to snap one way or another. If it is deflationary, and I don't expect this, the policy will be even more money printing. As far as the SDRs are concerned, it will certainly be inflationary. You may not be able to save the world, but you can save yourself and family by getting into some assets that will stand this inflation and be non-digital. Any digital money can be locked down with a few keystrokes. Non-digital banks, but the elites are ready for that also. What they have done, because you can't turn the military into police, they turn the police into military. As the money situation gets worse, states and elites will not go down without a fight. Jim RICKADS says in yesterday's analysis, I compared Janet Yellen to an athlete running the high hurdles at a track meet. Her finish line is a rate hike on December 13th. The hurdles are inflation data, the Trump tax cut, and a government shutdown on December 8th. She has to clear all three hurdles to make it to the finish line. These hurdles are all conveniently time-stamped. The inflation data came out this morning, the tax bill vote is scheduled for Friday, and the government shutdown is scheduled for next Friday, December 8th. As New York Mayor Ed Koch used to ask, printed the money? In 2008, everybody wanted their money back, and they printed the money. In 2018, or sooner, everyone is going to want their money back, but they are not going to print the money. They are going to tell you that can't have it. They are going to lock down the system, and close the banks. Money market funds are going to suspend redemptions. Stock exchanges are going to be closed, and they'll say it's temporary. That's what Nixon said when he closed the gold window in 1971. They will do it to buy time until they can't flood the market with SDRs, special drawing rights IMF currency. So, do we get inflation or deflation in the upcoming economic crash? Rickards says, you might get some deflation first, but I don't expect